Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For those who don't know me, my name is Jeff Jolly. I serve as the Executive Director at LIST Greater Kansas City. Really appreciate you coming out today. I want to thank our friends, Rosanna and the team at Mark One Electric, for hosting us here. This is a beautiful facility, and we're really excited about the conversation and opportunity to gather today. I'm going to be real brief because really nobody's here to listen to me. They're here to learn from our panelists. But I do want to share a little bit of background. I think many of us in this room knew that housing was a crisis long before the COVID pandemic hit. But I think as our community saw kind of evictions and, increases in rent and other things during COVID, it became more publicly aware of the challenges in the housing ecosystem with production and preservation efforts. And so we were pleased to be able to work with Mid-America Regional Council and our friends there at Mark to create this regional housing partnership, not because we had the solutions, but we wanted to create an opportunity to convene stakeholders and thought leaders like yourselves on how do we address these problems together. Because ultimately there is no single solution that's going to solve our housing crisis today. But if we start to put together the right pieces, we can build a puzzle for what a housing ecosystem looks like that we want in our community. So we're really excited about the work. We appreciate the strong partnership of our regional housing partnership with Mid-America Regional Council. I see some of our coordinating council members are here. Thank you to all of them. I see one of our chairs, Raina Park Shaw, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for joining us. Our other chair, Holly Grummertz from Johnson County. So we have bipartisan or bi-state representation. And then the coordinating council is made up of representatives of a diverse ecosystem, diverse kind of sectors. And so really, as part of that work, they've come together and said, let's have a conversation and work through this kind of workforce issue. If we want to build more housing and preserve more housing, we have to make sure that we have a workforce available to do so. And with that, I'm excited to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Carly Turner. No, I'm not. Who am I handing this off to? Oh, I'm sorry, Nate. My bad. If I had read this agenda that I carried up here, I'd have known that. But I just like to wing it. I got back from Chicago late last night, so don't hold me to it. Nate is a good friend. We have had the opportunity. Daniel Serta on our team serves on the NICE board. And we have had the opportunity to work with NICE at least over the last 6-7 years that I've been at LIST. But really excited. Nate's kind of taken over in the last 18 months or so, 2 years. So let me turn it over to a guy who knows what's happening here, Nate Zier.
Knows what's happening is kind of a relative term. I'm coming off the backs of my biggest event of the year on Tuesday. But unlike Jeff, I prepare notes or I will be a rambling fool up here for a while. Just to introduce myself again, my name's Nate Zier. I'm the Executive Director of the National Institute for Construction Excellence. We are a local 501c3 that works with industry partners and the K-12 ecosystem to create stronger career awareness and preparedness in the skilled trades. I recently had an HVAC system replaced. I don't know if anybody's had to do that lately, but if you've tried to hire a contractor to work on your home, to do new development, you've probably, heard some of the same things. Hey, we're booked out, or we can get to you in a few months. Or when you get that quote back, you're looking at it with a little bit of staggering eyes going, is this going to cost how much? Look, this isn't just an inconvenience. I think truly for us, it's an indicator of a larger problem, because what's really happening isn't just high demand. It's that there often aren't enough qualified workers to fill roles. I think this word qualified is an important distinction that we need to look at and that I think we can talk about a little bit later. The reality is Kansas City's growing. We see it in new developments, revitalized neighborhoods, and the continued push for more affordable housing to create clear pathways to homeownership. But the biggest constraint right now isn't land. It's not materials, though the prices of materials are certainly cause for concern at times. A big part of it, if you ask around, it's the workforce. And that's why workforce development and residential construction matters, not just for this industry, but for the future of our communities. At a national level, the construction industry needs hundreds of thousands of new workers every year just to keep up with current demand. And locally, groups like the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City will tell you the same thing. Labor shortages are one of the biggest barriers to building homes in our region. Organizations like the Mid-America Regional Council have identified construction as a critical sector for economic growth and mobility. That's one of the reasons, obviously, why Mark and Lisk got together to form the Regional Housing Partnership, and obviously why workforce development's a key component of that discussion. Today's convening is part of the Regional Housing Partnership Workforce Action and Impact Group. This group exists to examine and expand strategies to preserve and maintain existing attainable housing stock across the region, as well as expand the workforce by equipping individuals with resources and skills for careers in the housing sector in the Kansas City area. So when we talk about workforce development here, we're not just talking about jobs, we're talking about housing access, affordability, and the ability for our region to grow in a sustainable way. This Workforce Action and Impact Group meets monthly, and I'd ask just at this time, if you're a member of that Workforce Action and Impact Group, would you please stand real quick to be recognized? That's some of you. Nobody's standing. You can hear me, right? Some of these guys over here on it, Aaron's on it. Yes, Jordan's on it. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. We formed this with 0 people. So if anyone's interested in joining this group or would need a reminder that they're part of this group, please talk to Carly Turner after the event to get yourself signed up. When we talk about workforce development, though, there's some real challenges that we have to be honest with ourselves about. First, it's recruitment. We've got an aging workforce with lots of skilled tradespeople nearing retirement. National data shows that 41% of construction workers are currently set to retire by 2031. At the same time, we're not bringing in enough young people into the trades to replace them. Even with incredibly robust and strong programs at places like Northland Career Center, Herndon Career Center, and Manual Career Technical Center, demand is still outpacing supply. While part of the issue may be perception, what we're also seeing is a lack of interest in people willing to teach these critically needed entry-level programs into the trades. On top of that, we're competing with other industries for the same talent pool. Manufacturing, logistics, large commercial construction, they're all pulling from the same workforce. So it's not just a shortage, it's a mismatch between the skills we need and the pipeline that we've built. The second challenge is consistency. Residential construction is tied closely to the economy. There's no way around it, especially interest rates. When rates go up, projects slow down. When projects slow down, work becomes less consistent. This can create instability for workers, and when people can't rely on steady work, they leave the industry for something more predictable. For employers, it's just as tough. You're asked to invest money in training. You're asked to invest time and effort, and when things slow down, you can't always keep the good help. So workforce development isn't just about keeping people in or getting people in. It's about creating a system where they can stay employed and stay active. The third challenge, I think, in residential construction is sometimes the structure of the industry itself. Residential construction is incredibly fragmented compared to the commercial sector. It's made up of small businesses, subcontractors, and independent crews to complete jobs. That's especially true here in Kansas City. A lot of workers operate as independent contractors. And while that creates flexibility and the ability to set your own schedule and work at your own pace, it also creates a lot of challenges. It creates less access to benefits like healthcare and retirement. It creates less formal training systems and infrastructure, and it creates fewer clear pathways to career advancement. Organizations like the Associated Builders and Contractors point out that this decentralized model makes it harder to build consistent, scalable workforce systems. During my initial comments, I mentioned that the industry is finding challenges in hiring qualified workers. Qualified workers aren't often entry-level positions or company leaders. In fact, the entry-level pipeline looks really strong from a K-12 ecosystem standpoint. Programs are expanding, student interest is growing. What we seem to be experiencing more of, at least from my purview, is a missing middle. The experienced enough individuals who can offer needed guidance, training, and support to help that new employee gain skills, develop confidence, and build and train that next generation of builders. So even when we want to invest in training, the structure of the industry can make it harder to do that sometimes in a coordinated and meaningful way. But here's some good news. Kansas City is actually in a really strong position to lead in this area. We already have great partners. We already have programs that work. And we know that when young people can get hands-on experiences, when they actually build something, solve real problems, and see the results of their work, they're going to engage. So the question isn't if we can solve this, it's how do we scale what's already working? There are a few things we can do right now. First, from my vantage point, we start earlier. Not just in high school, but in middle school. We introduce students to careers before they've already decided on another plan or pathway. This is where organizations like mine come into play. Earlier this week, we hosted over 50 construction contractors and trade partners at the Kansas City Convention Center, flooding over 130,000 square feet with a trade show for middle school and high school kids. Over 3,300 students from across the Kansas City metro registered for this experience, and they got to work hands-on with companies across the area, across the region, to better understand the built environment and better understand career outcomes and pathways in that event. I know several of you were here that day, so thank you for joining us and making that event possible. We couldn't do it without the support of the industry at large. We're also working on mobile outreach to primary and middle school students to better help them understand the joy that is derived from building something with your hands. The Home Builders Association also works to create robust experiences for students through their KC Made and Parade of Playhouses events, which bring together area schools for friendly competition, highlighting their building and woodworking skills. And for the first year, they entertained a parade of doghouses for some middle school students, with us working with a group of Northeast middle school students to bring some doghouses to the events. The second thing we need to do is make learning hands-on and visible. This can happen through job sites visits, internships, real build projects. Those experiences stick. Programs like the Independent School District build houses every year, which work to self-fund their program through that sale. Local organizations like the Kauffman Foundation Real World Learning Initiative are also creating high-demand experiences for students. But it's up to industry to work with these systems to create those pipelines. The Kansas City Regional Workforce Partnership is also looking at construction as a critical demand sector and figuring out better ways to bring in and upskill workers in this sector. The third thing we need to do is we need to create more clear connected pathways. In the commercial sector, more clear lines forming from pre-apprenticeship to journeyman careers are much more visible, and they stick with real skill and wage progression. So I'd ask the group today, what does this progression look like in residential construction? How do we create clear training pathways and systems that work for the sector? I think most importantly, we need to continue to change the narrative, though. These aren't just fallback careers. These are careers that build homes, build communities, and futures. So when we talk about workforce development again, we're really talking about something bigger. We're talking about creating opportunities for people. We're talking about strengthening the communities we live in. And we're talking about making sure that Kansas City continues to grow in a way that works for everyone. Because at the end of the day, if we want to build more homes, we have to build the workforce too. And if we do that well, we're not just solving a labor shortage, we're building a stronger Kansas City from the ground up. So with that, I'd like to introduce the moderator for our panel, the chairperson of the Regional Housing Partnership Workforce Action and Impact Group, Carly Turner. Right? Did I read the...
Thank you, Nate. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ask my panelists to come up and join me, please. We're going to get started on the panel now. And if you didn't happen to grab an agenda, after the panel, we'll have some time for questions for the panelists. And then we're going to move into some facilitated table conversations. We might have to do a little musical chairs around the room to make sure we have a facilitator for each table, but if you all would just bear with us while we do that part, I think the conversations will be really plentiful and resourceful. All right. I'm going to try not to mess up the speaker. Hi, guys. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to share with this end of the row. So first, I'd like you all to just introduce yourselves and tell the folks what your relation is to the housing construction workforce.
My name is Sean Woods. I'm with Ashlar Homes. We're a local home builder and developer. We build about 175 homes a year throughout Kansas City and all the metros.
My name is Jordan Sheely, and I'm the founder and project director of Jerusalem Farm. We're a community-based nonprofit in the historic Northeast of Kansas City, Missouri. And we work with volunteers as well as organizing local residents around dignified housing, so home repairs, rehabs, and some new builds this year.
I'm Tate Williams with Central Bank of Kansas City. We're a CDFI bank here in town, so that's a community development financial institution. Prior to this role, I ran a workforce development program and a construction company training youth in the trades, and I'm a carpenter by training and upbringing.
My name is Cameron Sipe. I'm the executive director of Labor's Labor Management Trust. So I help take care of the relationships between the union and the contractors, and I represent them to developers and municipalities, creating opportunity as we continue to build our community.
Good morning. My name is Kelly James. I'm the current technical education coordinator for Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. So I get to support a lot of workforce preparedness programs. Construction is one of them.
Good morning. My name is Gabe Perez. I represent a nonprofit organization called Unified Contractors. We primarily educate, train, advocate for small minority and women-owned businesses, but we do have a big tent, so we welcome everyone.
Thank you. You can hold on to that. And
Do I want to? Oh, and I'm primarily here because she drafted me into the panel, so.
Gabe's going to cut up to that. That's okay. I'll introduce myself since I probably didn't do that. I'm Carly Turner. I am program officer for housing and capacity building with List Greater Kansas City. You heard from my boss at the beginning of the program today. I work on the regional housing partnership with Hannah Mitchell. There she is. Okay. Who is the housing manager at the Mid-America Regional Council. And we will go ahead and get started. I have a question that I'll ask the same question to everyone. So if you just pass it down the line. Gabe, can you tell us what pathways are currently bringing the next generation into construction careers, and where are the biggest opportunities to grow the pipeline?
That's $100 question, but right now we all know, Nate touched on it a little bit. Labor and workforce are an issue. We all understand that, but I'm here to tell you that the good news is, because I see it daily, there are a lot of our young people out there working right now with just a little bit of help. They can become good, qualified contractors that would build the capacity in this community or any others. So the main thing is recruitment of those folks, education of those folks, and eventually retention. And retention is accomplished by full-time employment. So that's really what we need to get to.
I think Nate highlighted a lot of what's happening in Kansas City with K-12 education. Our school districts are working hard to create pathways for our students, especially in conjunction with real-world learning and our industry partners. I think there's a huge opportunity, though, to continue to view K-12 education as workforce development. It needs to start young.
I think there's multiple things going on at the same time, and I'm thankful for it, because a lot of it, the work that we're doing right now is just talking to the right people and having the right conversations and figuring out how we serve each other. There's things within the school. I love the programs that expose children to teach them about what apprenticeship is, what mentorship is. Opportunities within the industries and things like that. There's also programs that help young adults and even adults at many stages in life, because while we're referring to this group of people as workforce, I'm going to just kind of reframe it as people who are trying to figure it out, just like you and me. So these are people that are trying to figure out how to pay their bills and raise their families and build their communities. So we are talking to each other, and this panel right here is a great example.
Yeah, my area of focus has been on what's often referred to as opportunity youth. So these are young people ages 16 to 24 who are typically outside of normal education pathways. Maybe they're on the cusp of dropping out. Maybe they've dropped out of high school. Maybe they've chosen not to go to college. And so a couple of programs that I'll emphasize and highlight are there's a federal grant that's awarded to different organizations called Youth Build. And currently right now, I believe JVS, Jewish Vocational Services, has been awarded that grant. And there's a couple other nonprofits in town that are seeking to apply for that grant as well. So get behind organizations that are applying for the Youth Build grant. It specifically works for young adults, providing a supplemental income for them as they get their GED and learn the construction trades. A couple other examples, just right here with groups like that. I know Cameron and the Laborers Union is working with JVS on their Youth Build grant to provide the next step for those youth after they start that pre-apprenticeship program. And then I know Jordan and Jerusalem Farm are working with Great Jobs KC and young people who come kind of in that category and are referred to him through that channel. It's all about income for those young people as they learn. So it's pre-apprenticeship before they join a formal employer or enter the union apprenticeship trades. So another program that I'm going to highlight, highlighting a lot of programs, Build Tribe is a partnership with Cornerstones of Care for youth in foster care specifically. So Opportunity Youth is a lens that I view this through, young adults who are wanting to get active with their hands and maybe have fallen off the radar for a lot of the formal systems that exist. There's good work taking place there.
And there's been a lot of people asking, what was your exact question? I don't want to get off track too much, but
Next generation and the pipeline.
oh yeah. I think, what Tate said is what would have been my answer. We work with a lot of high school students that come in as volunteers, and then we work with Great Jobs KC, 18 to really, we have a scholar that was just 45 and looking to get into the trade. So with our program, I think what Nate said, everyone's going to echo. Nate could be up here himself, maybe, but people like being on site and working with their hands and seeing what they do. And you can learn about it or sit through a session about what it means to be a carpenter or a plumber, whatever it may be. But until you actually do it and you're in the elements and you're doing the hard labor, you need that time to discern, like, is this really for me and what I want to do? Or, or maybe it's not, and that's fine because it's not for everyone. But having on-site training, we find really inspires people, and it puts the practical element to, I could build this deck here, and I can go to my house and maybe fix my own deck that I need to fix. And so those things really inspire the folks that we work with.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, most everyone's covered the pipeline here. I think one pipeline that exists out there that it's a hard one to grasp, I think, a lot of times is I feel like the vocational side of schools has just picked back up in the last 4 or 5 years. Like there was a 20-year gap in there where it was a negative connotation if you weren't going to college after high school. And I think that's that gap that exists right now where we've got these 50 to 60-year-old workforce people and then 20-year-old. There is no gap in the middle. So I think there's a ton of kids that have gone to college, received a degree, and they have no idea what they're going to do with it, or they come out, they can't find a job, or they do find a job and it's not anywhere near the pay they thought it was going to be. So I think there's a huge pool of people in that same realm too. I love the fact that, we're not talking anymore about 9 through 12 grade, but we're talking about going down to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, because I think that the kids there that learn that, hey, I love working with my hands, or I love seeing, the fruits of my labor when I'm done with it. That's the next generation. But I do think there's still that stigmatism where if a kid goes to college and he has a degree, he thinks there's no way I can go into the trades at this point because I'm a failure, basically, which is a terrible connotation, but that's what we've done to ourselves over the last 20 years. I think it's starting to turn, but it's like a huge ship. It's going to take a while to do that.
Thank you. Jordan, this question is for you. What are the most effective ways that we can start to expand hands-on construction learning opportunities for students both inside and outside the traditional education system?
Yeah, thank you. That's something that we're trying to work on right now. So just the other day, I took our cohort of Great Jobs KC Scholars over to the Builders AGC north of the river, and they have a great, training facility there. But as we were there, they were saying, 80% of their training takes place with the employers on the job site. And then 20% of it might be in the classroom or in their training facility, like fine tuning their skills. And so at Jerusalem Farm, it's the same thing. We see that when we bring them, our projects as a nonprofit around minor home repair for low-income families. So we might get a request to repair the siding or the deck, and we're bringing folks that are in our program and residents that we organize with to train them on how to do these practical tasks that are building up their own community, but also teaching them these skills and that they're practicing. And I find that really effective because when they're working on projects within their community and they're helping build up their community, they're being inspired. And then they're also thinking, hey, I can go do this on my own house. I could go help my cousin or my friend fix up their house as well. And then that gets them thinking in that way. And so I think that's one way that we can support organizations, local organizations that can get people out. If we can tie training to affordable housing, if we can tie training to our minor home repair programs that we have where we're putting this funding and get people onto those sites, then I think that really will strengthen their appetite to then continue that. And one thing I really appreciate what Nate said as well is, in the commercial, it's kind of a clear path with the unions on where you can go. But with the residential, it is more scattered and it is more unclear of like, because now do I have to become my own general contractor and figure this out? But people aren't ready for that yet. So like, what is the clear pathway that then they can go into those jobs? But
if anyone has anything to add, you can.
Yeah, I would just continue to reiterate what's already been said. Children like getting dirty. They like making messes. And then somewhere along the way, we tell them to stop doing that, and that they can't make a career out of that. And I think that's going to be changing as AI takes a lot of the data work that many professionals do kind of away. The moving of physical atoms is going to be a priority for humanity, bluntly. So I think it's not that kids don't want to do this work. It's that currently right now we're asking kids to start a job where they have to get at site at 6 a.m. They have to be willing to sweat. They have to be willing to deal with dust and dirt. And they were never taught that that's okay. From the time that they were 5, they were told, stop doing that, get a real job, and so there's a challenge there that I think that we're dealing with just embracing the fact that we as humans, we know how to get dirty and we know how to do this work. It's that we've been telling each other to stop that for the last 40 years.
I just have one thing to add. So before I started this position as the director of the Labor Management Trust, I was an instructor in our apprenticeship, and I came through the apprenticeship myself. I truly believe that mentoring is the longest, best standing form of education. And I've also been around a lot of people who resonate with this same kind of saying of like, well, these kids just don't want to work. And I was a kid. And, I appreciate what you're saying very much. When I went back to the training center, I really felt that they just needed the right invitation. They needed to be told, like, no, this is yours. If you want to take a bite out of it, take a bite out of it, and you're going to get a good return on investment for your time. But a lot of times we spend so much time with our kids, like, here, put them in front of a screen, and thank God I got raised by Sesame Street instead of an iPad, right? But, we've done so good. I agree. We're natural. Everyone in this room has their own tendencies that they like to do. Thank goodness. We should all just do that, right? And figure out how to make it work. However, we're playing within this other system, which is wonderful. So encouragement of each other, invitation to each other, figuring out how to get to know one another in a blended model that balances all things. With that, that's enough.
So one of the things that I hear most often in education is students don't wanna. They don't want to get off their phones. They don't want to get off their computers. They're not going to do the work. And what these gentlemen are saying is absolutely correct. Our request for enrollment in our hands-on classes far exceeds our capacity to offer them. Students are excited to build. They're excited to see what they have created, and not digitally. They are excited to touch and do. We can't meet the demand of our students to do this. So I want to be here to assure you that our students want to do hands-on work. We are limited in our ability to offer it, but that demand is there from our kids.
You can hold on to the mic, Kelly. The next one's for you. And we've talked a little bit about the student perspective and the desire that is there, but can you tell us about how we can better reach parents to be able to shift the perceptions about construction as a viable long-term career path? Because I know that's something that you encounter also.
Absolutely. And forgive me, I am a note taker at heart. So yes, families want what's best for their kids. Every family, good families, bad families, having no judge, they want what's best for the kids, but they only know what they know. And most of our families are very unfamiliar with what that construction pathway and career opportunities look like. Quite frankly, I think we suffer from a marketing problem. Talk to our friends in manufacturing. They have the exact same issues. Families don't know how to support what they don't know. So what I think we need to do is focus on clear communication and meeting families where they're at. Families want to know that there's money and opportunity for their kids, and there's both in construction. But if you don't know that, you can't help your kids and support them in that decision making. So we need to discuss competitive wages. We need to discuss no school debt, which if you have kids, you know that's a tough conversation. The opportunities for advancement that exist, and then this long-term stability and demand. They want to know that whatever they're encouraging their kids to go to, it's going to be there for them. And there's a lot of fear right now about whether jobs people hold are going to be here in 5 years. We know these jobs are going to be, and we need to assure our families of that. So different ideas as I was thinking through the questions. Our industry professionals need to speak directly to our parents, and there's lots of opportunities to do that in schools. We are blessed to have industry partners come in and speak to our kids, but it also needs to be to parents. Alumni is a huge opportunity. Wherever you went to high school, go talk to those families because you're speaking to your own community. We need to have showcases where parents can see hands-on demonstration to better understand what construction looks like. A lot of people do not understand. iBuild is a great thing that breaks down those barriers and misunderstandings for students, but what can we do to encourage parents? I know with my own students, I was invited to go to college fairs. So if you've ever walked up and down the lines of tables to talk to all the different colleges, I have never been invited as a parent to attend a job fair to better understand careers. So why are those being held during the day, but the college fairs are being held during the evening with the parents? And we just need more involvement. The best advertisement for being involved in construction is going to be kids. When my kids come home excited, I will be excited. And so we need to inform students what this opportunity looks like, how much they can get paid, and how they can grow. So I think what we need to do is just reframe our parents and our students thinking about this as a skilled and technical profession that offers great long-term growth.
Thank you so much. You can pass it to Gabe.
Thank you.
You're up. How can smaller construction companies be better supported in order to scale their workforce so that they can take on additional projects?
Good question. We have a lot of programs in our community. We work closely with Builders Association, with ABC and other groups. They have their own training courses, things like that. Someone touched on it earlier. I think, and we're in discussions now, because by the way, we've opened our own training center, because we felt like although everyone was giving it their best effort, we weren't meeting people where they were. We're all snowflakes, Nate's needs and difficulties may be different than Daniel's. So where are those people at? Where do they want to go? And what's the best path to get there? Workforce development, contract development can go hand in hand, especially in our industry. Unions and non-union contractors can coexist in this community. We can find a path forward. We continue to have one-on-one meetings with our contractors to know exactly what they want to do, where they want to go, what type of work they want to do. We try not to tell them how to operate, but we do ask some financial questions. So if in fact they need those kinds of things, we can. As we deal with minority and women-owned companies largely, let's face it, minority and women-owned companies hire other minority and women. So that makes up a great portion of the construction workforce right now. I've said it before, there's a lot of talent out there that's just undiscovered. They need a little help. They need a little one-on-one training, both hands-on and on the office side. So development to me means the whole, pardon my analogy, whole enchilada. I need to know where you are at, where you want to go, and the best path to get you there. And we need to do that one-on-one sometimes. And we need to develop places that people feel comfortable going to. Training sessions are great, but if you're a contractor that's looking to just get a business license or a contractor's license, and the folks up front are preaching to you about bonding, it does you very little good to be in that room. So we need to be a little more inclusive and sensitive as to what our contractors truly need to develop.
Same question. All right. So I think, repeat your question so I make sure I don't go off a rail. Okay. Yeah. So Nate touched on this as well. I mean, in the residential field, it's extremely fragmented. I mean, we often have drywallers and painters to where I'm hiring a painter who's hiring a subcontractor who's hiring another subcontractor to go paint a house, it's a terrible business model for especially a young person who wants to get into the system and start to work. Because at that point, they pretty much have to learn about work comp insurance. They have to learn about general liability insurance, or they're out there working ineffectively. So, I don't know that I have a great answer for this one other than somehow trying to build not so much the workforce in the area, but the size of the contractors that we have in Kansas City, and as well, trying to incentivize them somehow to have employees, instead of having this plethora of subcontractors, because it does not lead to a good career path. I think a lot of people, with residential construction say there's no benefits, there's no 401k. Well, our company, we have 30 employees. We have 401k. We have medical insurance paid for our employees, but we do not have people that are actually on the job doing work besides excavators. So we have like 5 employees that are in the field doing work. The rest of them are project managers or architects. So that field labor, we have to figure out how to, I think, first off, build the trade partners that they're actually providing the jobs for them, and encourage them not to have steps of subcontractors. And I don't know that I have a good answer for how that works, but I think that's where we need to start.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that very much. A lot of my conversations that I get to have with contractors is explaining to them what the benefit is to being signatory with a trade union. There are many different kind of points of view. A lot of them come with what we grew up with being told about trade unions. And so a lot of my conversations begin with just like defining a couple things out. So here's a couple things. We need our contractors to make a profit. If you're brave enough to be an entrepreneur and be a builder and run your own contractor, we want you to find success. We want to create that success as tradespeople with and for you. when we meet with our contractors for contract negotiation, we need those conversations to be fair and equitable because we want to be seen and heard just like everybody wants to be seen and heard. If there's an understanding that the workforce is the engine to what is creating the profit, then we would like a fair share in what we created with you. Obviously, we come from all different groups and we have different desires of things to do. With the union, the contractors get to, and this is just on the commercial building side and on the heavy highway building side, and that's where the majority of my contractors are with. And I want to talk further about residential contractors, but the contractors can expand and contract depending on how many contracts they have. So X contractor gets all of the water line contracts, so they need to hire a lot of water line workers. Well, previously the other contractor had that contract, so a lot of times the same people who worked for that contractor doing the water line are now going to go over here and work for this contractor and doing the water line. In the union setup, working with the union trades, it's very easy because your insurance is the same from that contractor to that contractor. So from a tradesperson trying to figure it out, learn a trade, provide for family, have insurance, those types of things, it makes it a lot easier. For the contractor side of things, they get to expand and contract as their needs come and go. A lot of times what that means is we get to do more work internally, training for the next thing on the next job site, because the contractors, so our training centers, have trusteeship. So half of the trustees are contractors and half of them are from organized labor. And because of that, we have this nice blend of, okay, what's next? What do we do next? Because as builders, I don't want to sit around and talk about something and not do it. I want to create something and I want to drive past it with my family and go, hey, Dad, look what Dad did over there, right? Or one summer I worked on a water line and I was like, sorry, kids, somewhere I did pipe in here and it's all underground now, but, but there's a feeling in that. So for the contractors being a part of something that allows them to expand and contract while keeping their business in a healthy state, we need them to stay in a healthy state. We want to be a part of supporting that. And we do that in a lot of different ways.
I know there's a lot of other questions, so I'll try to keep this brief. I made a ton of mistakes as a small business owner. Probably, I'll claim it, more mistakes than anybody else up here on the panel, as far as trying to do this. So let me say this phrase and I'll unpack it very briefly. Make sure that your commitment matches your capacity. Okay. So I skewed my commitment greater than my capacity. So at one point I had 20 young people in this category of opportunity youth on my payroll and 2 skilled tradespeople. My commitment was there, undoubtedly. The capacity to perform the contracts that I received was not there. So it created a sense of urgency on those skilled tradespeople. It created an environment of urgency for young people on the site. They had a lot going on. So what I would just caution small business owners is it's okay to let your capacity match your commitment. Your capacity can change. Figure out exactly what Cameron just said. Tying up with the union might be the right choice because now it creates a different level of capacity for you, right? So now your commitment to youth can change or to workforce development can change because your capacity is different. So just make sure your commitment, we're all here because we're committed to people getting jobs. I think that's why we're all here. It's clear. Make sure it matches your capacity. And that's a tough balance to find. But it's important for banks. I will say this as well, that because we can see that, on your spreadsheets, what your capacity looks like. We care about your commitment, but we can only finance capacity.
You can keep that. And to your point about partnerships, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, what kinds of partnerships between industry, education, of course, and nonprofit organizations are needed? Thank you very much. that are needed most to expand and strengthen training opportunities?
My personal take on this is we got to start with the person. I feel like we're often building programs in silos, and then trying to figure out how to connect those programs to each other. And meanwhile, people are lost and they're like, I don't know how to connect with that program. It's with me, so I'm not going to get involved. So I think we need to listen to people more. People who want to get these jobs, people who want to enter the workforce. We have to listen with them and try to build something first with them in mind. And be willing to lay down our institutional kind of categories for the sake of, hey, this employer over here has 2 employees who need training. How do we help that segment, as opposed to, well, if they don't sign up for this program, then they're out, and I think that applies to youth who are dropping out of high school. It's not working for them. It's not that they're wrong. It's that it's the programs aren't set up for them in mind. So let's figure out what works for them,
Would you ask the question one more time?
The question is, there we go. What kinds of partnerships between industry, education, and community organizations are most needed to strengthen training opportunities?
Ones that are honest about what is actually needed and what is available right now. We do a lot of training sometimes that doesn't lead to actual career paths or opportunity for the individual who's trying to figure it out, whether they be a young person and single and have very limited bills, or maybe they're older and have a family and have obligations. That person is trying to figure out how to go to work tomorrow. And what they're looking at is a catalog of various things that they might be able to try, pre-apprenticeships, ways to explore industry that might find a job for them in 6 weeks, maybe. The honest conversation.
I must say I am appreciative of all my industry partnerships. I feel like our programs are well supported, and when we ask, they do their best to help. I think sometimes it's with education, it's helping us understand what we don't know. Most of our educators did not come from industry, and so helping us better understand what it is we need to be preparing students for. We have the kids, we have the interest, but helping us better understand how to get them ready for industry and then help with that handoff. I think that would be the most beneficial for us.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know about the young people in your lives, but the ones in mine, this generation doesn't accept, hey, you need to do this. They want to know why, when, how, all of those things. And that's a good thing. They're asking questions. So we just need to expose them earlier and demonstrate to them that a career in construction can be beneficial, and let them choose their pathways. We work, like I said earlier, with a lot of different organizations, and we have to have real talk between those organizations. We didn't start a training program because it's just a dream I had one day. We started our own training program because it was the single best way to outreach in our communities. And people are reacting to it positively because we've created a safe space for them where they don't feel intimidated. They feel heard and listened to, and then we address their real concerns. And I think that's the conversations we need to have if, in fact, we're going to build a stronger, better, more qualified workforce.
Thank you. Sean, this question's for you. This is pivoting a little bit from the training portion. Can you think of any scalable models or approaches that can help increase housing production across Kansas City while maintaining quality and affordability?
Wow. We could be here for like 2 hours. Only related to workforce or just scalable models in general? I think that, the scalable model for attainable housing, and that's Ashler Holmes is passionate about attainable housing in every area that we build. But, I think the workforce is 10 to 20% of our problem. I think the rest of the problem is, we've come to a point where we have this crazy idea in our head that we don't want that type of housing in our neighborhoods, which I think is the most crazy thing in the world. But NIMBYism is huge. So you have municipalities that are trying to dictate what you can and can't build instead of just letting the market show you what is going to sell. I mean, that's kind of how our ecosystem should be built. So you've got that. Obviously, like we've talked about, construction is a risky business. Interest rates ebb and flow, things like that. So the process to actually get housing up and started, it takes way too long, and that contributes to, if I found a piece of ground today that I wanted to develop into housing, it takes me about 18 months to 30 months to even get streets in there. So by then, what I might have thought was a good idea 2.5 years ago, maybe a terrible idea now because interest rates are 8% or whatever. So we've got to figure out how to shorten that life cycle as well, which I do think leads back to the workforce, to where they would have a more stable working environment, because they don't have to worry about, I was working for somebody that was doing 500 homes a year, and now the economy has changed. They're doing 50 homes a year. Obviously, you can't maintain that workforce. So I think the attainable housing, the model to do it has got to be, it's a workforce discussion. It's having municipalities and cities and legislators committed to the process to make it faster, to accept what needs to be accepted, to be able to build the house more affordable. I mean, I think you could meet with any professional builder developer. They could probably tell you 50 ways to lower the price of that house by 20%. But when you normally get in a room and you start talking about it, the cities won't adjust, and they're not willing to take on what needs to happen. I mean, if you look at the regulations we go through today versus 20 years ago, I mean, it's ridiculous. My dad and I have conversations about that all the time, and he's like, we should walk down to City Hall and get a permit. And like, yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. Well, our plan sets that used to be 4 pages are now 35 pages long. It's the same exact house we built 30 years ago, but it's still 35 pages long. So I think that discussion is, workforce. And also, like we've talked about here, a fragmented trade partners makes it harder to build scale here. For us, like I said, we build about 175 houses. We do that in 5 different communities around Kansas City. We typically have to have a different contractor for every scope of work in every one of those neighborhoods, because nobody's big enough to let us bring them to neighborhood. So that's something that has to be solved as well.
I have a pretty limited view of this because we only work in the historic Northeast, but we have some really big challenges to building housing there in Kansas City. And, it ranges from the things he's talking about with the pre-development work and some of the infrastructure, maybe the sewer lines or water lines need to be extended because they're in alleyways or different ways you want to position the house, or there's environmental work that needs to be done. And then you look at the neighborhoods that we're working in, and the average income is 50 to 60% AMI. And then the houses aren't being appraised for anywhere near what it might cost to build. And so those are big hurdles to overcome. One way that, we see a path forward is, when we're hiring residents from within that community and paying a wage that then they can then afford to buy that house that they themselves are building, or they can refer their family or friends to buy the house that they themselves built. Now you're lifting wages in a community and you're building houses. But yeah, this still is going to take, 3-5 years to get houses off the ground because of all the fundraising, the financing. We have to get super creative. Central Bank's been a great partner in helping figure that out. And so there's lots of challenges, but I think they can be overcome. It takes time. It takes collective effort and bringing industry together. So I'm really grateful for this panel and the connections of people coming together. But it's going to take all the sectors, public and private, coming together to make building happen in neighborhoods like the historic Northeast.
Cameron, this question's for you. This is sort of pivoting a little back to focusing on the workforce. How can we better connect trained workers to job opportunities, and what systems or organizations should play a stronger role in that process?
Talk to each other. Communication. Say the question one more time, like the second half, especially.
Better connect trained workers to opportunities, and systems or organizations can play a stronger role in the process.
Yeah, I think we're doing a lot of it. We just need to continue to become more efficient. The laborers union works with many different community organizations, and as we have capacity, we bring more people in. Once you're in the labor union, we make sure that you're cared for. Maybe you need mentorship on, if it's a seasonal kind of work. Everyone's aware of that, right? I just want to say something real quick that you said. Builders have to deal with the rain and the snow and the wind and the weather. Why are we giving them more stuff to deal with? Right. So that's interesting. We should try and make it as easy as possible for each other. The laborers union, once you're a member, you're in and we care for you, but we can't take you in if we don't have capacity to make sure that we can take care for you. But we work with community organizations like Jerusalem Farm. Those folks come down and visit our training center. We put them through hands-on opportunities. They've been getting skilled trained on residential work. And as we can, we place and we help contractors meet people. That's what a lot of it is. There's just so many different things, so many different layers to this pie that this layer doesn't know this layer. They just know of that layer, but they don't know how to get to that layer. So a lot of times it's just communication, and you have to sort through the busyness of life to find the time to talk to the people you have to talk to.
That's good.
Can I share a specific example without giving specifics about doing exactly what you're doing?
Yeah.
So another hat that I wear is I'm a commissioner for the Housing Authority of Kansas City. And currently the Housing Authority has a plan to redevelop all public housing in the city. It's an enormous plan over the next 10 years that would involve over 7,000 new apartments getting built. And one thing that the Housing Authority has done is begin forming a relationship with the laborers union. And it's a really creative partnership that we're discussing of the possibility of even financing through pension investments from the laborers union some of the projects that the laborers union would then in fact actually construct. And as part of that, would develop a workforce partnership with the residents of the complex in which they're working. So that kind of example is something that I'm seeing Cameron lead specifically, of just kind of unpacking, okay, financing has to come in. We have to have a partner who owns the land. Families need the benefit of the work, and they need the quality home produced at the end of it. And our skilled labor needs the jobs to do it. So that's a really creative example that I found of specifically what Cameron's up to right now.
And we're really doing our best to be as thoughtful with it as possible, because whenever you have projects and developments and redevelopments and you're going to knock this housing down to make room for this housing, a lot of times we forget in conversation, where did the people go that used to live in that building? So what we're trying to do in the process is a tremendous amount of workforce development in that area with the community that lives in that area. Let's teach each other how to build our community and then do it.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch briefly on something that Sean and a couple others have said. I don't know if there's any municipal folks in the room, but I will tell you there's very little reason to have any residential single family permit review last the kind of time that we're seeing now. Speaking as a former code official, I'm very well versed in the codes, very well certified in every area. When one would cross my desk, I always thought, oh, this one's an easy one. Single family housing has the most lenient codes in the code book, and the code book is that thing. Yeah, we have to check for structural life safety. But we do those things and then we need to move on. Where we get bogged down, and it depends on which municipality you're submitting to, is all the add-ons. Well, what kind of shades are you going to put in the windows? What kind of landscaping are you going to have? Those things are important and they need to be addressed. And what kind of impact does it have on the storm, sewer, water systems? But the actual review of a single family house shouldn't take that long, period, in any municipality across the country. I know we're trying to be proactive and do things like standardize housing plans, standardize this. That stuff was tried back in the 80s. I understand that. There are difficulties with that as well. But just the submittal of a single family drawing to any municipality shouldn't take that long a review. Sometimes we tend to be our own worst enemies and that we pile on requirements. If you go to City Hall, there's probably 6 or 8 people that have to look at that drawing. Why? And 3 or 4 different departments. Why? If we had a single source submittal process who already knew all the other functions, and if they met those and were qualified to do the review of the structure itself, it should be a seamless and efficient process. I have not found a good answer why it takes so long. In most smaller communities, for example, they have one person doing all those functions. And you can usually, if he's on vacation, get a permit in a couple of weeks. So there are ways we need to improve that process to make it easier for all affordable housing people and housing people in general to help us move forward.
Thank you, Kelly. But first, I'll give a shameless plug for the Regional Housing Partnerships Impact and Action Group on Policy and Process, which covers some of the issues that Gabe was just speaking about. So in addition to Workforce and Action Impact Group, we also have Policy and Process and Community Voice, which will be doing some work around the narratives that exist around housing that Sean mentioned about NIMBYism and not wanting to have certain types of housing built in your neighborhood. So there will be some work that we'll be doing later this year to sort of see what we can do to address those types of narratives. But back to the panel, commercial break over. Kelly, how can we make it easier for skilled trade people to teach and mentor without requiring access to the traditional teaching path?
So in education, we don't like to make anything easy. Everything depends by state. So what teacher licensure looks like in Missouri, it is very different in Kansas. So working in the state of Kansas, I'm going to speak to that state. The Kansas State Department of Education allows for us to hire skilled tradespeople based on certification and experience straight to the classroom. So you can take your certifications, we can bring you in, and we can give you a whole bunch of students. Last year I discovered a unicorn. It was actually a former IDEW journeyman who decided to start teaching high school and is now teaching our electrical classes. It was like winning the lottery. The problem is there's very little awareness that exists. I can't think that, and I think that that's on the schools. We don't do a good job. If you were to look at our job postings, we do not say, hey, don't worry about it. We can get you there. But then it becomes kind of a recruitment issue and a sustainability issue. So it's very hard to find people because we don't tell them. And I also think that we don't maybe lean on our industry partners to help us identify people. So that's where our partnerships could be increased, but also then it's the sustainability. As someone who came straight from industry to the classroom, being handed the keys to the classroom and seeing the person walk off down the hall, it doesn't work very well. So it's about our schools thinking outside the box and realizing this is where our students' interests are and this is where our community's needs are, and finding a way to work with industry to recruit, and then building our internal systems for that sustainability so that those people not only once they enter the classroom, but that they stay. So the pathway exists, but it needs to be shored up, certainly on both ends.
Thank you. Nate says Missouri is very similar. Thank you.
The laborers union is getting ready to launch our construction trades curriculum at East High School off Van Brunt. This is a curriculum that's in place on the East Coast, on the West Coast. It's down in Texas, and we're piloting it with Kansas City Public Schools starting this fall. The memorandum of understanding to define who employs who is too much. And then you have the other situation of we really would love to plug someone in to teach this program that has industry experience, and our salaries are $35,000 away from each other. So how do we plug that in as well? And there's just a lot of simple questions that the answers seem to be very difficult for. And I think we're still figuring it out.
Yeah, I think we're also, because we've kind of neglected this for 40 years, we are now asking the skilled tradespeople to also become teachers on the job. A lot of ways. And so I think, back to that commitment and capacity for developers and business owners and city officials in the room, think about how to create that capacity for the companies that are doing the building to be able to incentivize those skilled workers to be less burdened with the urgency of the timeline of the project and have some capacity to do some skilled training on the job, right? So that essentially means that the supervisor has to be able to say, hey, I get it. You're going to take more time to get this task completed because you're spending 50% of the time teaching and letting mistakes happen. That's critical to the learning process in the trades, is mistakes must be able to happen on the job, hopefully safely. But without the mistakes happening, young people don't learn. So the mistakes have to get made on the job. Somebody has to bear the cost of that. So we have to think through, how are we allowing the skilled worker to have the mental and emotional capacity to allow their apprentice to make mistakes and not be freaking out about the timeline slippage on the job because the boss is yelling at them and now they're going to fire that person. Right. So that's how it flows. Right. So we have to think top down, emotional, mental health capacity, which also costs money, to allow those skilled laborers to have that time on the job, because they're often 40-year-old to 50-year-old individuals, men and women, mostly men, let's be honest, who have their own personal things going on at home. They've done this way for the last 30 years or 20 years or whatever. They're frustrated. They're fed up. And they can get a little grumpy on the job site. I don't know if you all have been on a construction job site. It can get a little tense at times. And so we've got to create that emotional capacity for that layer if we're asking them to do more training. Whether it's in the classroom as a retiree, that's awesome. They've created that emotional capacity for themselves and their life has allowed for that. But if it's on the job, their boss has to be willing to give them that emotional capacity.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Did you have something on that, Jordan?
Ditto Tate.
Okay, that works. Thank you. We have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask everyone to answer the same question. During the conversation, you've covered how there are multiple layers that impact the construction workforce, but the worker themselves. But if you could you tell us how a person can take a clear and realistic career pathway from entryway to long-term stability?
That's me first.
Yeah.
Great.
You have the mic, so you can start.
Yeah, with us, we had some challenges for that. In our program, with the unions, like with the laborers or some of the other unions, it's a lot easier to have that clear pathway because you can go discuss with them. They give you a sheet of employers that you can go and contact and get employed. That's very clear. I wish that was the same with, all the other jobs out there around construction. We have one challenge that a lot of our residents in the Northeast, English might not be their first language. In fact, we work with all of our employees at Jerusalem Farm. We started a few years ago with 3 employees when we expanded our dignified workforce program, and now we have 12 full-time. And every day people are saying, hey, my friend, my cousin, someone wants to work because they want to do this. We don't have the capacity as an organization to hire everyone in the Northeast. I wish we could do that. But we have challenges. I'm not talking about Spanish. I'm talking about Swahili, Korean, Burmese, the many different languages. And the way that we make it work, we're like a construction light program, I guess, because we have a very safe workspace for people to make mistakes. Maybe we have someone that's bilingual that speaks Swahili and English, and then they might be working with 2 or 3 people that just speak Swahili, and then they're companions until they learn how to do that skill on their own, and then they can begin doing it on their own. I think that's really difficult for for-profit contractors to do because time is money and mistakes are money. And we're eating the cost as a nonprofit, and we're getting subsidized donations and grants and things like that for that learning to take place. But I think that's one of the big gaps that I think we need to fill is how do we get people from our safe space of construction into these like high-paced, grumpy. They're not all grumpy. Taste being maybe Concrete Day gets really grumpy. But yeah, how do we fill those gaps would be my question.
I'll give just one very specific example of a young man that I'll call M. So M was a KCPS student. He was contemplating dropping out. He had enrolled at Manual Tech's career and education platform in their construction tech program. I was mentoring in that classroom one day a week. And I met him and was able to hire him his summer of his junior year. So he had the summer job with me. He committed to going back and finishing his senior year. He did that, and then I was able to hire him full-time upon graduation. M had a rocky road with us, involving, at one point, he even threw a sharp object at his supervisor, who he felt was being too grumpy with him, which would have been a terminable offense, except we were able to pull the supervisor together. I took literally an entire afternoon out to lunch and said, hey, we're going to talk this out. And guess what? They got paid the entire time, right? So real cost for the business to cover that conversation, but worked it out. M stayed with us for a couple more years until business situation. I had to let everybody go. And M got a job with a residential builder, similar to Ashler Homes, but a different company. He was doing punch lists on their finish out. So for the last 2 years, every day, he showed up to work. He's held the job. Well, just a couple weeks ago, he asked for an opportunity if I knew anybody in the union. He said, I want to make a career move. I want to go union long term. Cameron took a meeting with him, made a connection, and on Tuesday he starts with J.E. Dunn. He starts training and he's on that with J.E. Dunn on Tuesday. So we're talking, his commitment has been there the whole time. Young people are willing to make the commitment. They're willing to do the hard work. We as a society, and specifically owners and everyone in the ecosystem, has to be willing to say, all right, we're going to take a moment and have a meeting. We're going to take an afternoon and just talk this out, because he's worth it, and so that would be, kind of how the ecosystem can work in our city, but it's going to require us kind of taking a moment and sitting with the person, not talking about another program. Sitting with the person saying, what do you need to make this work for you right now? It may change in a couple of weeks, but right now, what can we do for you?
Just want to throw some snaps up for that. Well, no. I mean, I'm just a connector. I'm just happy to put the right people in touch with the right people. But it's the easiest job to do is just be helpful. It's there are so many things that carry so much weight in the decisions that we make. And it's like, am I doing the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? And here's what I want to say. I know what's best for me. You know what's best for you. I want to put trust in the fact that you know what's best for you. And I want you to make moves based on that. And what the opportunities are that are available to you. We do so much decision making that's in line with like, ooh, there's a lot of liability over here, or that this one might have better vacation, right? But a lot of it has to do with us making choices of what's best for me. I'm single dad with 2 kids, so my stuff is down this road. So encouraging each other. This is my answer. Okay, sorry, long-winded response. My response is this: encourage each other to know they know what's best for them, and whatever that is, just more encouragement. And then when your friends come back to you and say, "Did I do the right thing?" You're like, well, it's up to you. It's your choice. Like, what did you learn? And here's the other thing we were talking about this morning. So many of us have been focused on like this word mistake or failure, and I just want to share that a little bit more. I hated math in high school. All right, I flunked out second semester of algebra. I literally had a teacher tell me like, "Cam, you should never do a job that requires math." And I'll tell you what, as like my pride as a learner was pretty non-existent. Coming out of high school, I spent time doing other things, and then I came back and I had an opportunity in my apprenticeship, and they're like, "Hey, how are you with math?" And I was like, "Let me tell you." And they're like, "Well, just hang on a second, because if you learn the math, you can make an extra $1." And I said, another $1? Okay, all right. Well, let's just look at it. Let's see it out. And the thing that was different this go around is somebody showed me what the math was doing. So I got to see the process of it, and I got to click in, and I understood, and that I was just a different kind of learner. And I had to have somebody reach me as a different kind of learner, a hands-on learner. And so what I was going back to the other way was, we have to meet people where they're at and trust people to say who they are, and then to just go hard with that. I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that we've talked a lot about today is relationships and connecting people and mentorship. And that means so much at the age where I serve. One of the aspects that I think that we miss is, can I see myself doing this job? At some point, all of you looked at somebody else who did your job that you're doing now and was like, yes, I can see myself with his job or her job. Relationships and seeing yourself are what our students need. So when I think about the opportunities that we have to provide our students to see themselves in these careers that are being discussed, I think about taking our young women on job sites and to experiences and to speak with mentors and build relationships. Are they having the opportunity to speak with women in those roles? And I'll be honest with you, if you look at the panel, the answer is probably not. Hi, guys. The same goes for our students of color. I work in an extremely diverse environment. Every language that you named, I hear you. But an extremely diverse environment. But when we go on these opportunities, are all of our students able to see themselves in this work so they can build those relationships and set those mentorships up? And that's something we're working toward, but it would be something I would pose to the group and to all of you to help us help all of our students see themselves in this work as we move forward.
I think I was way off the question. So.
I think it's been covered pretty well already, but I would just add early exposure. Young people need to be exposed a lot earlier. The failure rate of success is far greater if you wait to expose that person till they're in a desperation situation. Hey, I'm looking for a job. And they landed on construction for whatever reason. My house used to be the house where all the kids hung out. And they all loved to be in the garage with me because I would be piddling around, building shelves, building something. And they all wanted to touch and feel the tools and know how to operate and even use in some cases. But we need to expose them. Not all of them are going to be built for the construction industry. I could tell pretty early on the ones that probably wouldn't have the aptitude of running a nail gun or pouring concrete in 100-degree heat. But if we capture them early, their success rate is much higher. Let's not wait until they are out of high school, maybe drifting a little bit, looking for something, anything to make a career out of, because a lot of them will fail. They are not cut out for the construction industry. But if we can catch more of those folks that have that sort of aptitude early, our workforce issues would be greatly solved. This is my commercial for school districts and education. We need to make more noise about funding vocational programs in the schools. I know I live out in the Shawnee Mission School District. From middle school on, those programs have been gutted or are no longer in existence. So we're not going to develop a good, strong, healthy, competent workforce if we don't catch them earlier. And we're heading into, well, I don't know if you've heard the rumors, but there's rumors that Kansas City may be building a couple of significant sports stadiums in this area. We are talking about thousands of jobs. It is going to make residential and light commercial projects even more difficult, because those folks are going to see dollar signs and say, I can make an extra buck working in Wyandotte on the Chief Stadium or the downtown stadium. So we need to start thinking in larger terms. We should have addressed workforce 20 years ago. We didn't, and now we're faced with, what do we do now? So expose our young people and train those young people that are already working in the profession to get better and have better communications with builders, organizations like the ones represented up here.
Yes, I'll make this quick. I think on the residential side, especially, like we talked about, extremely small trades, right? So they don't have HR departments. They don't have people doing hiring for them. So I think youth that want to get into residential construction, unfortunately, have got to lean heavily on the people they know, their teachers, the Homebuilders Association of Kansas City, things like that, to try to get their foot in the door. Because unfortunately, while we desperately need workers, we're busy enough that we don't have the people out there seeking the workers. So for them to get their foot in the door, a lot of times that's calling everybody you know, that somebody's got some connection somewhere to get, at least an interview or somebody could have their name passed on to somebody else. And I think the other thing for the residential construction side is the first 5 years, I think, are imperative. So I have a couple young kids that work for me. They both did a couple semesters in college, decided they weren't cut out for that. They came to work for me. And I said, look, you're giving me 5 years and I don't want to hear about anything I tell you to do. Don't talk back about what I'm asking you to do. Just do it. And I promise you there's a reason. They both have made through that 5 years now. And it's amazing to see the things that they know and like the depth of the knowledge that I never would have thought they had. But I think young kids today, a lot of times think, hey, I'm going to do this for 6 months or a year, and all of a sudden I'm going to be the boss. It's like, no, that's not how that works, for one. And for two, even if it did work that way, you're not going to be a good boss because you don't have enough depth of knowledge to, help somebody else train them, for one, or even deal with a hard situation. So I think, on the residential side, like I said, it's that first 5 years. Get your foot in the door. Be willing to do whatever. Don't be scared to jump trades. Some of the best tradespeople are the ones that understand other parts of the trade. They may not be experts in it, but they understand it. Those make the best workers in the field. So that first 5 years is imperative. After that, I think the opportunities are endless once you get to that point.
I just want to say I love this conversation. I think part of what makes it available to have is the fact that our housing has gotten more expensive. 10 years ago, with the cost of housing in Kansas City, if the union were to go to a house builder and say, hey, can we talk? They a lot of times would say, well, there's not enough margin for us to talk. And now we're in a situation where maybe there's enough margin for us to talk. Because again, we want our contractors to be successful. while we are having our conversations and figuring things out, we need to encourage each other to educate each other and ourselves, because there are things that make this conversation around wages possible. One of those things is it's really important for us to have a good grasp on what is the Davis-Bacon law? What is prevailing wage? How is prevailing wage established? So we have prevailing wages in the commercial and heavy highway contractor that are great. You can raise a family. We're now trying to have the conversation around residential. What's that wage look like? What can you do with it? Thank goodness we can have it. At the same time, last week, a representative in the state of Missouri announced that they are going to bring forth a bill going after Davis-Bacon laws for the federal side. So while we are actively trying to be progressive and figure this out, there are also laws coming into place that they're trying to push through that are going to actively hurt the laws that protect our wages or ability to collectively bargain or our ability to come together and have power in numbers, because I myself will struggle to get that raise. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking these wonderful humans who participated in our panel this morning. Thank you all so much. I inadvertently assembled the tallest average panel in the history of the world. Cameron is 6'10". Yeah, in the morning. Yeah, so that's a fun tip to add as well. So we have just a few minutes for a couple of questions for the panelists before we move to our next piece. Our Mayor Pro Tem has a question.
Yes. Thank you. Excellent panel. I'm inspired with so many ideas that you all came up with. And so I'll talk with you offline. But one of the opportunities I think that we could also take advantage of is the justice involved citizens that are returning to our community. Every year we have 1,000 of them that are returning. And so I would just love to hear from you all any opportunities that you all think, and are there existing programs that are reskilling or upskilling any of them to get them engaged. I know of one particular program, a nonprofit that brings them in, they renovate homes, and then that is where they stay, because the other issue that many of them have is they end up homeless in our community. So just want to hear any insight there. Thank you.
I'm not an expert, but I know that Great Jobs KC is one program that is good for folks to get into, and they can connect those individuals to a multitude of industries, not just construction, but through our partnership with Great Jobs KC, we've had justice involved individuals come through our pre-apprenticeship. And yeah, so I think that's one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, similar. I employed in that kind of category of opportunity youth. That includes justice-involved youth who are returning after a period of incarceration. And it is incredibly difficult because the employer may make a decision to hire, but that young person often has obligations outside of work that are incredibly burdensome. Meetings with their PO, urgent court appointments, urgent this, urgent that, that require an employer to be incredibly gracious with them. So again, we're talking about an employer with capacity matching their commitment, making room for a person like that on their payroll. And that's a really important thing that we all should strive to do more of. But it is challenging. It's out there. Just real quick, the Youth Build grant that I mentioned is open to justice involved youth. So that those organizations that are participating in that grant, it's something to pay attention to, and then a variety of different nonprofits around town, and the laborers union, right? Talk about it.
Right. We work with a lot of different organizations, both private organizations and also with the state itself. With the correctional facilities itself, they have programs for those who have obviously decided that they need to go a different path, take a different bite, and go with it. About a month ago, I had lunch with about 20 young men over at the Missouri Department of Corrections. These are all young men between 15 and 18. They were locked up for some pretty serious charges. However, they had the best behavior, and so they were. I was invited to come in and share lunch with them. I brought pizza in with me, and we sat down and talked about what apprenticeship is and all that kind of stuff. We have programs that work with foster care systems. We have programs that work with young adult, all of them. It's important for us to have those relationships, and at the same time, it's important for our community to also welcome them back, checking in on each other.
I really love this question. Within the past week, I have spoken, my school district, we support the Juvenile Detention Center in Wyandotte County. That is one of our schools. I've had the opportunity to speak with the principal, instructional coach there, as well as my partner at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, who supports prison training. We are working currently to figure out how to bring information about careers to our juvenile youth, our youth who are currently involved with the justice system. And I, like you, am leaving inspired with a lot of ideas, but I think we need to also consider not just our adult population as they reenter, but how to bring these career opportunities to our youth so that we don't have them on that end as well.
Our group is not necessarily an employment agency, although we do refer people to other agencies that can help them. But what we found is if you spend time with those folks and understand, I give the speech to everybody that walks in the front door, check your ego and your complexion at the door because I'm not interested. What I want to know is where you're at and where you want to go. So dealing with the majority of our partners who are minority and women-owned companies, they have been extremely willing to listen and give, if you will, second chances to some of the folks we have referred directly to them after my conversations with them. And because really what they're looking for is a job. They want to start their life again. And that starts with employment.
Thank you. So I have been informed that we ran over time a little bit, and we do not, it's okay. We don't have as much time as I hope to be able to have the table conversation. So what I'm going to do is ask first if anyone has other questions for the panelists. And then I think what we'll do is send out the questions that we had formulated for the table conversations in an electronic survey. So if you all would like to share your responses there, so that we'll be able to still capture your thoughts and ideas after this event, that would be much appreciated. But if anyone has another question for the panelists, I'm going to go here and then over there.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the panelists. Just learned a lot. The question I have is, how do you either navigate in or around work ethic issues, such as addictions and that type of thing? I keep hearing that that's a big stop as far as hiring, especially with the youth. So just like your opinions of that. Thank you.
All right. We hear a lot about work ethic when we speak with industry partners. The majority of the conversations we have surround what you might call soft skills or 21st century skills, work ethic being one of them. One of the best ways that we found to teach that and allow students to practice that is through real world learning opportunities. So as I see our partners in the Home Builders Association building for the Parade of Playhouses, KC Made, those large projects where they are working as a team, where they are committed to one another, really allowing them to practice that and understand that. But real world learning opportunities have provided us the best opportunities for that.
Thank you for the question. It's incredibly important. We talk a lot about mental health, and I kind of learned to rephrase things in order for my message to land with the apprentices I used to work with day in and day out. And I don't refer to it as mental health. I refer to it as, how is your relationship with yourself? And guiding young people who are still figuring it out on how to make choices in their life based on how much they love themselves. And then that affects how they treat the people around them. This May 31st will be 10 years for me without alcohol. I appreciate it. I don't share it for praise. I share it for modeling, because I also think we kind of lack a lot of models in whether it be in person or on the TV. I needed to step back away from alcohol because I needed to work on my relationship with myself. So encouragement as we talk to kids about what's your career going to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? The best thing I could hear a kid say is like, someone who cares about myself and will make choices about myself that will show that love and therefore treat each other that same way. It pays forward. So that's it.
No, it's incredibly important. And I want to be clear, work ethic and substance use and abuse, two different, things to kind of process through. But as far as the substance use goes, I was running a company. I made the decisions on who we were going to hire and how we were going to hire. And I hired full well knowing that I was hiring people who were using and abusing substances. And that was a choice that I made as an employer. And that's going to vary, that's going to look different for a union signatory than it does for a non-union company. It's going to look different for a residential homeowner or residential builder than it does for, a different company. So these are choices that the business owner can make. Then it comes down to the ethic inside of that institution, like from the top down. How do we treat mental health and the fact that all of us are coping in some way or another with life, and how do we give each other grace as we do that? And the problem with that is that's in direct conflict with capitalism, right? Capitalism says produce, get paid, produce, get paid, produce. If you don't produce fast enough, if somebody can do it for less, you don't get paid. So you have a business owner who's facing capitalism head on every day, trying to create an ethic inside of their culture that protects their employees and creates space for people to be humans. And it can become incredibly challenging. So that's where we get back into conversations like Cameron brought up about wages. We have to have structural protections around wages, minimum wage, and what gets enforced, to have that business owner kind of fight back on capitalism a little bit, to create a little bit of grace inside of their business to help people navigate through life, remain employed while they hopefully get some support for that substance use disorder. So thanks.
Hi, I'm Kalini Ibrahim. Represent Mercy in the City and RK Contractors. Know several of you guys. I love what everyone is saying. It's so on the heart of what we're working on. You speak a little bit too about your ability in math, and I started my career as a teacher, but English teacher, and so like needing math so much in these type of roles. Anytime I talk to bigger contractors who are building like the massive apartment complexes and stuff, they always just reiterate to me like they just don't know how to make the single residential family piece move forward, and so like they're like about efficiency and bottlenecks and it. But on the flip side, it seems to me that the bottleneck is how much we have made it a process to build a home. And so I didn't know if you have anything, you say specifically, like make sure your commitment matches your capacity, which we all know those of us with the heart to create these ethics. So really a practical question is who foots this bill? And is it the municipalities? Is it the businesses that are taking from, because every time I go into a meeting, they're like, the math's not working. And my new favorite saying is from Crockett, the math ain't mathin'. So who foots this bill is in practicality, not just like way up here, but like, who do I need to talk to? Who do all of the organizations who are doing this work? What specifically is it that we need to foot this bill?
Are you asking who foots the bill to bring attainability back somewhere?
Yeah, if we're going to put ethics into the bill, and that takes more time.
I mean, I think, and this is gonna be a very high level answer, but I think that the builders should foot the bill, but the only way that works is that when we come with ideas of how to make it happen, everybody's got to open their minds and say, yep, let's do this. And that does not happen. You can go to a city and take 20 things that'll reduce the price of that house instantly. And usually, if you're lucky, you get one of them. And they're all stuff that we didn't do 10 or 15 years ago. But today, for some reason, we think it's a necessity. And so I think, I mean, if you could figure out how to reduce those barriers or have cities, I mean, I often say, if there was a city here that would say, you know what, we're going to throw everything out the window. We're going for attainable housing. The rest of it will fix itself later. Every builder in the world would come there and you would have a great system of building homes for, you know, it's not going to be $150,000, but it's going to drop the price of the house $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 instantly. But everybody has to be open to the ideas and actually do them instead of just stand up there and say, we're all, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been in a city council meeting and they're on one topic. They're all about, we have to have housing. It's got to be affordable. And the next thing on the agenda just rose the rate. I'm not going to say that. Increase the price of the house by $5,000 and it passes 7-0. And it's like, what? You're not committed to housing. And so I think until we get that commitment, the footing of the bill will come from the people that want to build the houses if we can get the barriers out of the way and do it.
Thanks for your question, Kalina, and also for RK Contractors and Mercy in the City, the work you do. This is probably a controversial comment I'm going to make, but you know, I just look nationwide and the widening wealth gap, right? And so we just talked about addiction, and there are just things in our society we need to do because of the right thing to do and not because it's profitable. And so when we're looking at building houses, like, why aren't we building the best quality house we can with energy efficiency that's going to have the long-term impact on the person that's living in that house, you know? But all these things cost more and more and more. And if the builder has to fit the bill, they're not going to do it. They're going to fight against it. They're going to fight against it. So what's the point of government, right? Is we're collectively collecting our resources to put towards what's good for the common good. And so if we're prioritizing jobs, if we're prioritizing quality housing, that's what government needs to be supporting. And we're doing that, you know, with stadiums, you know, we're helping people fill that gap. Well, we need to be doing that with residential housing as well. And then, yeah, and then philanthropy as well. Like when we look at, you know, funds in our city that are growing, and they're giving off of their, you know, earnings, but we need to start leveling that wealth gap and start, you know, disseminating those funds into supporting our residents in our community. And I think that is the only way we're going to actually do these things that need to be done, because it's not profitable to do it otherwise.
Yeah, I'll share. Thank you, Jordan. You should run for political office. I'll share as a banker. Banks can do more, for sure. Banks can do more in this space. So the couple of levers that banks have, interest rates, you know, so that's something that banks have a marginal control of. You know, that is actually kind of beyond the individual bank that you're going to talk to. They have a market that they have to operate within as well. They have to protect their depositors' money. So that's another thing that we have talked creatively as a bank. There are mechanisms for the philanthropic community and the nonprofits that are builders to partner together and use their banks to do it. So the philanthropic community, say a foundation, has a large deposit that they don't want to give it as a grant, but they can put it at the bank and they can pledge it as collateral to allow the nonprofit to borrow against. So from the bank standpoint, their money's protected because we have this deposit here as insurance against this loan if this loan defaults, right? Lending to nonprofits is tricky for banks because there's a high default chance. And so we have to protect that money. So by doing that, we have to then disclose to all those parties how much money we're making. right? That's where banks have to get more open to being transparent about how much money they're making. Because if we don't have to tell the foundation that has the money with us how much we're making off of the money they're holding with us, that's good business for us, because we give them a certain interest rate for their deposits and we go make a lot more money than what we're paying them with it. And then we don't have to tell the borrower how much we could reduce their interest rates. But when we bring everybody to the table and we say, hey, it's going to be your money that's going to secure this, we then have to disclose, hey, we're going to keep about, this many percentage points for our margin, right? Banks hate doing that. Banks hate being honest about doing that. So go to your banker and ask them, to be honest about this stuff. And it's tricky. But there are tools that banks can leverage, in this space. It's not going to solve the whole problem. We didn't, necessarily set. We are culpable in how markets determine price in certain communities. We could talk about redlining. Banks are culpable in that. So that now a home getting built in a certain part of our city is worth less than the exact same home getting built in another part of our city, right? Banks had a part to play in that, for sure. So, the long and the short of it is that, banks can play a little bit, in that space. What can the union do?
Be creative. It's really important to acknowledge the fact that every answer for everything is going to be kind of its own, because it's going to be ingredients of what needs to, it's fine. Screw that cell phone. We don't need that thing. We're here. In order to be creative, we have to be free to have ideas, but also to let go of ideas. And therefore, to find some of the better answers, so you're not recreating the wheel, maybe an easy way to do it is to look at the organizations who are already trying to do things creatively and work through things creatively. We understand that our apprentices, 80% of their apprenticeship is on the job site with the contractor. So we have a program where it's called a mentor program. That mentor that's training the apprentice, making sure they're not cutting their arm off on the job site, is receiving $2 extra for being that mentor of that apprentice. That $2 is coming from our training center, which is funded by the contractor. So for every hour that a union laborer works, I think it's 55.5 cents goes to the training center. So we have all the hours of the membership that works, and now we have a fully funded training center. We've developed a program at the training center that will help cover the cost, because the employer knows that that person who's mentoring is going to be a little less efficient on the building side of things. And because of that, that's going to cost them money, because everything is dollars and cents. And it has to be, because that's the world we live with it. So we are trying to get creative and think about what the next possibility is.
Yeah, I've touched on it a little bit, and I'll be brief. Affordable housing, and I don't even like the term affordable housing. We're making it really hard. The paperwork and bureaucracy side of this thing should not be that difficult. We talk about affordable housing all the time. We know we need it. We have plenty of land to solve the issue. We have builders who are willing to do it. Affordable means it's different in Overland Park than it is in Gladstone, than it is in Raytown, or wherever else you want to go. So I don't use that term often. It's single family housing. And affordable housing doesn't have to have the connotation of less than. We can build good quality single family houses anywhere in our metropolitan area. We just have to have the desire to do it. Unfortunately, when we get into conversations about how to do it, we get lost a little bit. We don't spend, we throw some money at it every once in a while, but we haven't solved the fundamental issues of why it's so difficult to do. Most everybody leans toward the big, bright, shiny things that we're going to build in this community. A new arena, a new downtown skyrise. I'm old enough to remember that if I wanted to go and build something, I had to go talk to my banker I had to convince him that it's a good idea. And if he was gracious enough to lend me the money, then we were off and running. But unfortunately, we are bumped out in the single family housing area by all the big, bright, shiny things that people want to build. And oh, by the way, we all support through your tax dollars the construction of all these big, bright, shiny things. So as much attention as we give to that, we really ought to give real attention to single family housing. And if you want to call it affordable, that's okay. But it's quality housing that any one of us can live in. And we need to get the attention where it really matters.
Okay, for the sake of time, I'll eliminate the question part of my comment. Brandy Chandler, great jobs, KC. Thank you all for your partnership. Thank you for referring people to us. You've mentioned us a couple times. We appreciate it. To Councilwoman's question about the justice involved population and how we're working with them. We have no shortage of people who are in our pipeline who fit that population. Just so you know, 3.5% of our scholars select construction. So we do have a selection problem with getting folks into the pipeline. However, the issue that we have, and no one will be surprised by this, is that when it comes to hiring folks on the other end, it's a case by case. It's, let me sit down with them. Let me meet them. Let me talk to them. I'm going to reiterate Tate's point. That's necessary, but there has to be a way to systematize and scale that willingness, because we do have builders and employers who are willing, but it always becomes this individual one-on-one. I'm a good judge of character. I'll sit and talk to him. That's great. But how do we scale that? How do we make that reliable so that when we have folks come into the pipeline, they know they have someone willing to talk to them on the other end, but not if they're just the kind of person that I happen to like. So questions about scale, how do we systematize?
Cameron?
I know which of my contractors do a lot of contracts at military bases, at prisons and jails. So the people that work for those contractors have to be able to pass a background check. We know which of our members can pass a background check because we go, hey, can you pass a background check? But we also don't judge each other because we've all learned a lot of things. We have a lot of contractors who employ folks who just need opportunity. Thank you for your comment. Actually, I've been talking about you. I haven't met you yet, but nice to see you here, and I'm looking forward to conversations with you. It's every single ounce of effort we put into it.
Sure.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because it's the same thing when we talk to employers, like, well, what kind of crime do they do, and they're trying to weigh it, and it's all one-on-one. So I don't have an answer, but that is a big issue that needs to be figured out.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Mark One for allowing us to use this amazing space. I appreciate your time this morning. This conversation has been great. I know that there are some opportunities for folks. If you have someone or a cohort that needs hands-on opportunities, there are project opportunities available. So if you happen to know those folks or have a cohort, let me know and I can get you connected with the folks who have the projects. And there is, I mentioned earlier that we have another work group on policy and process. We will be hosting another event on May 20th on modular homes over in KCK. So if you are interested in learning more about modular homes that are already built and standing, the processes, some of those municipality regulations that they had to go through in order to make that happen, since modular homes is a relatively new concept for our region. But we'll be hosting that on May 20th, KCK Public Schools office, and you can hit that QR code to register for that event. Thank you all again for joining us. Please look for the questions for the discussion to come out into your email. I appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.